Hello, everyone, to another episode of True Horror, a show where myself, Mehul, and my co-host, Nikhil, we are going to discuss interesting, weird, fascinating, and scary cases from around the globe. And we'll try to look for clues and unravel the mysteries as far as two people on the internet can do. So today we are going to look at one of the most fascinating cases that I've ever actually read about, and that is a case about the Circleville letter case. So the Circleville letters. So basically, Nikhil, so this case basically happens in the USA, and in particular, the in a place called Circleville, Ohio. Now, why is it called Circleville? Because the whole town is basically designed in circles. So a very creative name, obviously.
Interesting. Everything interesting seems to happen in the US. Nothing like
Ye-
this ever happens in India.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's debatable. So we are going to discuss today a story of some of the residents in Circleville, Ohio, and one of them was a certain Mary Gillespie. She was a school bus driver, and she was married to someone called Ron Gillespie, and they were seemingly happily married. And then one day, Mary received a letter in 1976. So, what does this basically say? It says, "Stay away from Massey. Don't lie when questioned about knowing him. I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified, and everything will be over soon." So, what is this all about? Well, Gordon Massey was the superintendent of schools, and basically the same school where Mary Gillespie worked as a bus driver. And what these, and she started getting several of these letters from in 1976, and the content of these letter basically accused her of having an affair with Gordon Massey. So, what did she try to do about this? Well, she basically tried to keep it to herself. But unfortunately, Ron also started receiving the letter, so she had to eventually admit to him what was happening. So the content of these letters were actually very, very vulgar. To be honest, a lot of them I'm not actually sharing here because we are a family friendly program, and so but it was not nice to read. Let's put it at that. So eventually, the Ron and Mary.
I have a question. Like, why was
Yeah.
this letter only sent to Mary and her husband? Like, there was some other guy who was involved as well, right? Macy. Like, why was the letters never sent to him?
Well, I think we'll get into that later on. There is, I think, once you hear a bit more of the story, we might get a better picture about that.
Okay.
So, Ron, that's a very good question actually, and we'll get to that. So Ron's sister, who was named Karen, and her husband, who was of Paul Freshour, and Paul's sister also, they were told of the stormont. And Mary actually had a suspect in mind. And who was this? This was a man called David Longberry. Who was David Longberry? He was also a bus driver. So just like Mary is a bus driver, he was also fellow bus driver. And this guy had actually had come on to Mary, and she had rebuffed him because she was married, and this made him very, very angry. So she thought that this guy would is probably the perfect suspect to actually be behind this whole affair. So what did they do? So they decided that Paul would actually write a letter to Longberry and tell him that we know what's going on. We know that it is you who is behind all of this. And after that, the letters actually stopped. and several weeks actually passed without any new letters coming. So initially, they felt that they had actually taken care of the problem. But unfortunately, that was not the case. So things began to escalate. So how did that escalate? Then you had big signs appearing all over the town, claiming that Massey was having a relationship with the Gillespie's 12-year-old daughter, and in a very inappropriate way. And so this was a very stressful time for the Gillespie. So Ron would get up early in the morning, drive all around town to remove all these signs before his daughter would actually see them when she was taking the bus drive to school.
I have a question. Like, was Mary's daughter in the same school as the one Macy was the superintendent of? Were they in the same school? Is
I
that something?
am actually not sure about that. I'm guessing that they actually he was actually in the same school. So I think that would probably be the case, because that would otherwise it wouldn't make sense for Massey to be accused of being in a relationship with the girl.
Yeah, because at first it's like Mary has a relationship with this Macy guy, and now it's like her daughter is also involved in all of this. Seems sketchy to me.
So yeah, we'll see what happens from here on
And
in.
also her husband, who's like in the middle of all this, who doesn't seem to have a clue on what is going on. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Ron is a real victim in all this. He's not clearly in a lot of stress here, because he's having to get up early each morning just to deal with this shit.
Hmm.
Then this is 1977. Remember, this started when 1976, so it's been like a year maybe. So Ron has received a phone call, and the at the other end of the line was a very sinister voice who was threatening him, claiming that he knew where Ron lived and what his truck looked like. And after this, after receiving the phone call, so remember earlier it was just the letters. Now he had received a phone call as well. Ron felt that he had actually recognized who this person actually was. So he had become completely furious once he figured out who this was. He became completely furious. He grabbed his gun, kissed his daughter goodbye, and took off like a madman in his truck. And that was the last time any of his family members would see him alive. Because what happened was that he basically crashed his car at the end of the street, and he was found dead behind the wheel. And it was revealed that Ron's gun was actually had fired a bullet, but it was not found at the site, nor was there any evidence of anybody in the area getting shot. So this is the actual picture of the truck when you can see it's completely destroyed.
Like, was the phone call never looked into? Like the one which he received, like Ron, the last phone call which he received, like with the investigating authorities, they never looked into the phone call, like from which number
I,
he actually got the call.
I
That
don't
could have
think.
like helped them trace it to a person, right?
Yeah, I think this is in 1977, before the age of cell phones. So I'm guessing they
Not cell
call.
phones, but you could still track like landline phone calls as well, right?
I don't think there were many phone calls, to be honest. This might have been the first and only phone call in this entire case. So it's not like the police were actually would be able to prepare for any kind of tapping the phone call or,
No, I'm not
or
talking
anything.
about tapping. I'm saying that can't they like actually see from which number the call actually came from? They did. They had to have facilities like that, right? Back in '77. Because if you could just
I'm not actually
uh,
sure about that. I'm not actually sure that you can actually trace a landline. Maybe not. I'm not really sure.
but still America, right? Back in '77, so I'm pretty sure they should have had that facilities, right? All you
Yeah,
need to do is like get in touch with like whoever the service provider was, right? And I'm sure they should have been able to give them those records, right?
I'm not sure you can actually track landline calls, but I think we'll maybe check that out at a later point of time. I'm not actually sure about that one. So but that's not the. We'll have bigger question marks over the investigation in a little bit. So The investigation found that Ron was basically drunk, so his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit for driving. So the sheriff, Dwight Radcliffe, basically concluded that this was a drunk driving accident. Obviously, the Gillespie family did not accept this verdict because this is just a quick, a little bit too convenient a coincidence that he crashed his car and died the very moment that he was sure that he was going to find who the Circleville letter writer was. So that is kind of convenient. Now, after this, after Ron died, letters started to reach other Circleville residents. So this became like a thing, basically. So the contents of the letter said many different things. So some of them claim that Radcliffe had covered up Ron's death. They also accused the sheriff of mishandling another investigation into local county coroner Dr. Ray Carroll, who had been actually accused of sexually abusing several children.
Wow.
So we have completely unrelated to the actual case, but then we are now noticing that the Circleville letters are looking at being sent to other people about relating to many other things.
Seems to be like a little pattern emerging as well.
Yeah, I think you could say that. So now for some of the twists in the case. The first twist is that Mary, after Ron's death, Mary finally admits to the relationship publicly. Publicly, she admitted that she actually did have a fling with Gordon Massey, but she claimed that it only began after she started receiving the letter, which is the biggest lie that I think anybody could actually ever say. So
Yeah.
you, somebody, you start receiving a letter accusing you of having an affair with someone, and
And
so
you start
you,
having an affair just for the sake of it. Brilliant move from her end. Truly a
that
brilliant move.
that is some
It's like
lies a little
someone
bit.
accuses you for murder, and after that you actually go out and commit the murder
Yeah,
just to make it real.
yeah, that is like a little bit too good to be true.
Yeah.
Let's say. So now the story is going to shift a little bit, and now we are going to Paul's brother-in-law, Paul Freshour. So we have already said that Paul was married to Karen and Karen Sue, and they had eventually gotten divorced. Why? Because he found her cheating. He had filed for divorce, and it ended up that he actually got the better bargain out of the divorce, and he got full custody of the couple's children. And so Karen eventually had to move out of their house, and she had actually moved into the trailer with Mary Gillespie in her backyard. So Karen was not happy, to say the least, after this happened.
Yeah, she must have been an angry Karen. Literally.
Yes. So the torment for Mary Gillespie did not end when her husband died, unfortunately. It continued. So the signs began appearing again and again and again. More and more signs began appearing on the side of the road on the route that Mary used to drive. And 1983, so Mary decided that she had enough and she tried to take down one of these signs. And I'll just remind people that this started when? In 1976, and it is now 1983. So this has been going on for an insane amount of time right now.
Like
So
this has been going for like almost 7 years, and like why wasn't like a proper investigation done in regard to this? Because obviously the letters were like threatening in tone, so the investigators could have looked more into like Mary's and that Macy guy's life, right? Why was a proper investigation never done to unravel what was actually going on?
yes, a lot of question marks can be raised about the investigation that was actually done in this case, and we'll get into that a little bit more about that shortly. So she had, on this day, February 7, 1983, Mary had decided to get off the bus. She had gotten fed up. She had wanted to pull down one of the signs. It was then she had actually found that it was a booby trap. So a box was attached to the pole, which is holding the sign, and inside of this box was a small pistol, and it was basically designed to go off. But when Mary would pull the sign, but thankfully she did not actually pull the sign right away, and the gun didn't go off.
Lucky escape, I guess.
Yes, a lucky escape, basically. So this is what the whole contraption look like. You can see see the gun here inside the box. Oh, quite an elaborate booby trap, I think we can
It's
say.
like the actual footage from the crime scene.
Yeah, this is the actual the booby trap.
Sure. Okay, nice.
Yes. So now another twist. The police examined the gun and they found out that the gun actually belonged to Paul Freshour. So Paul claimed that the gun was stolen weeks before and he was no longer in possession of the gun when this incident actually happened. So,
Was this actually reported by him to the cops that his gun was indeed stolen? Did he ever report it?
I'm not exactly sure about that. I may or may not have reported. I'm not entirely sure about that. But either way, even if he did or did not report it, it still seems very suspicious on a superficial level that that his gun has gone missing, and this was the very gun that was actually used to make the booby trap.
What would he actually gain from making Mary's life a living hell? What would be the motive behind it?
Yeah, so we'll get into that. So what did the police do? So they called Paul to the police station and they gave him a handwriting test. What did this handwriting test involve? The Sheriff Radcliffe showed him the letters and they told Paul, you see this letter? You try to copy this letter as best as you possibly can. After
What?
the yes, after Paul
And who
tried
would
to
actually show the actual evidence to like a suspect?
yes, so and they made him copy the letter and copy the handwriting as closely as he possibly could. Then they compared the two letters and they said, yes, they looks the same, and
And
it
also
must be
the
him.
Paul guy, like, is he stupid or something? Like, why would he even agree to that? And why would he actually listen to what the coppers have to say to him? Like, if he had even half a brain, he would try to like completely change his handwriting then and there. Like, why would
Well,
why would he agree to something like this to begin with?
either way, this is probably one of the stupidest ways to conduct an investigation that you'll ever actually read about. So after this, Paul was arrested and charged with the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie. And in October 24th, 1983, Paul went on trial. And then a handwriting expert told the jury that the handwriting perfectly matched Paul's. And then Mary had also taken the stand and testified that she had started to believe that Paul was actually the person who was writing the letters because Karen had told her this, that she had some suspicion that Paul might have been behind all of this.
And why didn't they go to the coppers?
Well, this is in front of the jury.
Okay, like, no, because Karen allegedly told this to Mary, right?
Well,
And
apparently all of these suspicions began after Karen got the raw deal in the divorce. So
highly suspicious.
yes, very.
She might be trying to take revenge on him, or
Yes, that
maybe
is.
she might be trying to
Yes, that is
pin
a
it on him.
very
Yeah.
distinct possibility. That is a very distinct possibility. And what happened in the trial? The jury found Paul guilty and they gave him the maximum punishment that could be given for the crime. That was 7 to 25 years in prison.
This is because of attempted murder, right? Because of that booby trap thing. That's
No,
why he
this is
got such
because
a
of the handwriting test. The handwriting test.
what 7 to 25. How does that even make any sense?
Yes. Yes. Handwriting test. Yes.
It's
So
just
he,
weird though.
yes.
Huh.
But the story doesn't end here because the letters actually did not stop. So even after Paul went to the jail and everybody thought, including Mary and Karen, claimed that he was the one behind the letters didn't actually stop. And the letters now had content uh, about the prosecutor in the case, uh, a man called Roger Klein. And according to the letter, that Klein had actually impregnated a school teacher and then had her killed, which would be odd, I guess.
Did
But
someone look into that?
yeah, yes, I'll finish the story later. But this was one of the random claims that the letter started to make after Paul went to jail.
There are a lot of odd similarities in this case, like lots of infidelity, lots of abuse. Like it all just seems connected. Seems like
Yeah, Circleville, Ohio seems like a very interesting place to live, I
yeah,
think.
seems like a real shady place. I wouldn't actually want to live there. But like whoever is writing the letter, it seems that they have like inside information on all these people. It must be someone who's connected, whoever this anonymous person is, or like group of people. It's interesting.
Yes, this could be like multiple people.
Hmm.
We'll discuss that in a little bit. So, what did the police think when the letters continue to arrive? They thought that it must be Paul. Paul must be sending the letters to himself from jail. So they tried to stop this. They checked all of his incoming and outgoing mail. And when this also did not work, they put him into solitary confinement.
Must have really sucked to be Paul.
Yeah. But the letters still kept on coming even after this. So eventually, Paul himself got a letter, and then finally the prison warden concluded that it's probably not Paul who's actually doing all this. So content of this particular letter is actually quite chilling. So it basically says, "Fresh hour. Now, when are you going to believe you are not getting out of here? I told you 2 years ago when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Tell no one of this letter. I saw the paper. Great news. Great. The sheriff loved it. Do you believe it now? Do you?
Wait, like the way the letter is addressed to Paul Fresher, it seems like whoever wrote the letter actually knows him in real life. So Paul might know this person, right, in real life. So if he has like anyone
Could be.
who might be
Definitely.
related to this, he could actually say this to like the investigating authorities or whatever and get this all cleared up, right?
This is definitely a very fascinating letter that could be interpreted in multiple ways, but that certainly gives some fuel to the theory that a fresh hour was actually set up. And
And it
he
also the way like the letter is written, like I told you 2 years ago, it's like pretty distinct.
yes,
Like he actually knows this person and he's like directly speaking to him. So maybe Paul was
definitely.
in cahoots with this guy, or maybe he knew this person, whoever this person was.
Definitely.
And if he did know, like, why did he decide to keep his mouth shut? Why didn't he actually approach the authorities and say that, look, I have a suspect in mind, it could be this person? Why didn't he actually go down that route?
Well, to be fair, I think the authorities basically got tunnel vision once they figured out that the fresher was the owner of the gun. So I don't think they were seriously looking at any other suspects after that, afterwards. So I
But
think
still,
it
that would be stupid, though, right? Because the letters, it was still being like circulated, right? Even though he was in prison and they changed him to solitary confinement, and still the letters kept on going.
I
And
I,
Paul
I don't think
himself received a letter in the end, right? And
I
also,
don't
like yeah,
I don't think we can expect too much from this particular department after that handwriting test. So I think we should curb our expectations about how thorough this investigation actually was. So Paul was actually denied parole despite being a model prisoner for several years. Because why? Because the letters kept coming, and nobody actually believed that he was innocent. Now, there was an incident about a man in a yellow Camino, which is a type of car. So apparently, about 20 minutes before the Mary had found the booby trap, another bus driver had actually seen a yellow El Camino parked at that very same intersection. And next to the car stood a large man with sandy hair who turned around, who was looking very, very suspicious. And when he saw that the bus driver was observing him, he pretended that he was going to the bathroom. And this particular individual did not resemble Paul Fresher in any way. So, what is the connection between this man in the yellow El Camino and our case? Well, Karen's boyfriend and eventual second husband looked quite like this sandy-haired man who, who the bus driver had described. Karen also had a relative who owned a yellow El Camino.
Wait, like if Karen actually wanted to do something harmful to her ex-husband, was Paul, she and her boyfriend could have like been in cahoots, stole the gun, did the whole thing, and they could have eventually gotten Paul in prison, right? They could have also like fabricated letters as well if they wanted to, right? They could have set this whole thing up, right? Just to get Paul Fresher in jail.
It's definitely possible, and if that is the case, they have definitely gotten away with it because they were never charged or convicted of this particular crime. So if they
And
were behind this, they have gotten away with it scot-free.
and during like this whole course of investigation, like no, none of the investigators ever looked into this guy, whoever like had this El Camino.
As I said, one guy is already in jail, so I think whatever the police department you work with all over the world, once somebody is already in jail for a crime, then the investigation is basically closed, I guess.
But
So
still, though, like the people working there, like did they not have a conscience, or did they not even have like a slight bit of curiosity as to who could have actually done it? Like it's, I mean, even a stupid person can know that this whole thing, seems rotten and everything seems set up and it's just not conclusive.
yeah, so there were a lot of problems with how this case was handled. I think we can say, at least in hindsight. So in 1994, so we started when? In 1976, and now we are in 1994. So Paul finally gets parole 10 years after being sent to prison, and he continued to maintain his innocence until his death in 2012 at the age of 70. Coincidentally, letters also stopped in 1994.
When he got out of prison.
Yes. Other, so let's just briefly look at some of the other things which also were related to the Circleville letters, because as we saw, a lot of unrelated things were actually mentioned in those letters. So Roger Klein was investigated for the supposed murder of the school teacher. He was cleared. Ray Carroll, the guy who was actually charged for being a pedophile, was eventually actually convicted of the same. Longbury, if you remember, Longbury was the guy who had come on to Mary initially, and who she and Ron had actually initially suspected to be the writer of the Circleville letters. He apparently raped an 11-year-old girl in 1999 and became a fugitive on the run after that.
Was he never caught?
I don't think so. So that is basically the story of the Circleville letters. So extremely confusing, uh, almost mind-bending level of twist there. So we'll try to find some theories to actually bring everything together and find get some theory that actually makes everything make sense, at least somewhat. First theory was that Paul was actually the Circleville writer.
Well, if he was actually the Circleville writer, like how did he get all this inside information that all these shady stuff was happening? And how did he actually get like inside information on like the prosecutor and on that guy who conducted the autopsy, some doctor, I forgot his name,
Yeah,
who
Ray
abused
Karen.
who abused the kids, and how did he get all this information?
Definitely. I think we could say that even if you do believe that Paul was the author of some of the letters, it is almost impossible that Paul was actually the author of all of these Circleville letters. And
And
it's
also,
really,
it could, I mean, like, it is highly plausible that, Karen and her El Camino guy could have written those letters to frame Paul, right?
it's definitely
They
possible.
could have definitely done that, right?
That's definitely possible. The thing that we have to say is that it's very suspicious that Paul's gun went missing, and a few weeks later it was found in the booby trap. But again, there was a lot of other evidence to suggest that Paul was actually being framed,
Hmm.
including one of the letters which basically admitted the same.
Yeah. The whole thing seems like, Paul was being set up.
Yes. Next theory is that David Longbury, the guy who had come on to Mary initially, he was the initial writer of the Circleville letters, at least the first few months or so, when we had that those vulgar type of letters were coming in. And Ron had recognized it was him, and but the car accident was basically an accident, and it was not actually there was nothing particularly there was no foul play in that. Later on, the signs and the booby trap and all of that was basically set up by Karen to actually frame Paul.
In regards to like Paul's death, like he received a phone call. What does he do after he receives the phone call? He goes and kisses his daughter, right?
Yeah.
So what if the call was something related to his daughter? Because if you remember, like back in the previous letter, they did like come up with like allegations that the Macy guy had like some sort of inappropriate sexual relationships with the daughter, right? The 12
Yes.
year old daughter. What if it was something related to that for him to like, completely lose his cool over a phone call? Because this whole thing was like going on for years. If he wanted to lose the school, he could have done that any other day.
Yeah, I think it was the first time that he had actually received a phone call. Most of them were letters. I think this was the first and only time that he had actually received a phone call.
Yeah, but for
So
him
once,
to
so I
react in
think,
the way that he did it
I
should have
think,
been like something extreme.
well, first of all, I think he was quite drunk to begin with, and secondly, I think uh, m- the hearing his voice must have actually made him feel that he actually knew who the guy was. That was why he got excited. Maybe he was drunk, he was excited, he was angry, and maybe that was why he crashed his vehicle.
And
That
also
is,
that there was like a bullet missing from his gun, right? What is
yes,
the
that is one
explanation
thing
for
that
that?
I cannot actually explain. Like I don't have an explanation for that one, unless the bull
I
because
mean,
the
like
bullet was never actually recovered from the scene.
who are the investigators in this case? Like there is like too many loose ends in this case. Like why was like no extensive investigation done into this Macy guy? Because there seems to be like a lots of accusations based on this guy, right? Macy. And was this guy like never married? Was he like a single dude or something? Like was he
Uh,
single or was he actually married? I'm dead serious. Like, did he not have a wife? Because like if woman if they even find like a hint of infidelity, right, the guy is gonna be under 24/7 surveillance, right? Was this guy never married?
I'm not sure about that. I don't think we have any idea about Gordon Massey's family life before what happened, but I'm
And
guessing
honestly, this
it was.
whole thing seems like fishy that they never really looked into this guy. There were like some serious accusations against him, like having a relationship with like a 12-year-old. That's like a pretty serious accusation. and no one really bothered to look into that. That's like messed up.
Yeah, but if he was having a relationship, but why would he be the author of the letters though?
I'm
He,
not
wo-
saying
he,
that he's the author of the letter, but why was like an investigation never actually done into him? Maybe he was up to something real shady. Like
Mm,
there's not like they
yeah, that's kind of like speculation right now. There's nothing that has been said anywhere about him that the initial letters were actually true when they said up those things about the daughter. Maybe it was Longbury trying to actually, make Mary and Ron angry because, it was later found out that Longbury was not a very good individual in any way or form. So it could be that he was just making shit up. So that is also possible. But in general, this is the course of events that I think, even if it doesn't explain everything, at least it is the one theory that I feel maybe makes the most sense in the story, because it certainly is unlikely that there was a single person behind all of this. So
yeah
multiple
that
people
yeah multiple people
must
may have been involved. Yeah.
people must have been involved, and perhaps for different reasons. I don't think it was they were all joining together for a common cause or anything. So that comes to the third theory, which is that many people were actually using the Circleville writer character for their
Hmm.
own personal gain
That would
to expose various people.
yeah that would make sense though, because someone starts off a trend and everyone starts picking on it just to you know as you mentioned in your theory, to expose people that they actually know, or some dirty secrets that they know about certain people. That would make sense when you think about it.
Yep. So it's like this is like the pre-internet era, basically. So I guess
Hmm.
this was the Instagram trend of
This
of
was
the
like the Circleville trend that was happening in that shady town. Everyone wanted to expose everyone's infidelity. So this was like the
yes,
trendy thing
the
to do. Write like random letters to scare people off.
yes, definitely
Yeah,
random letters.
yeah.
So I think those are the basic theories. So Nikhil, do you have any closing thoughts about this case?
Like theory three seems highly plausible when you think about it. Could have been maybe just some random trend that was started in the city then. It was a pretty sleepy town as well, right? People were bored and they needed something fun to do, I guess, and maybe this was their way of having some fun. Maybe that's what this whole thing was. And also, like the police investigation, it seems super shady.
Yeah, but the thing with the police is that you can never say that it was actually shady on purpose or whether they were actually just incompetent. So
I think they were like pretty incompetent because obviously it's like a small town, right? Whenever like a case like this, you know, blows apart, it's like you can't really expect the coppers to act in a professional way, now can you? Like
true,
Circleville, it's a I'm sure it's like a pretty small town, 12,000, right? That was the population that you mentioned, right? So
true.
I mean,
So
obviously, like the coppers don't have much to do there. I'm pretty sure the crime rate was pretty low there as well. And for a case like this to happen, so I'm guessing incompetency, or there was some much bigger evil force behind it, who were like pulling the strings from the side. You never know.
I'm thinking maybe it was a combination of theory two and theory three. Maybe theory two is the main story that happened, and lots of side characters decided that, oh, I also want to expose someone, so I will use this particular circle writer letter name. So maybe that was what happened.
This
But
whole thing came to a halt in 1994, right? Ever since that, there hasn't been any cases of letters, right?
yes.
Interesting.
But one thing we can say that it is quite doubtful whether Freshour actually deserved to be in jail for 10 years. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure there's any evidence to actually suggest that he should have been sent to jail in the
Mm.
first place.
Agreed.
So that was the case of the Circleville letter. We hope that you have enjoyed listening to our review of this particular case. Sorry for the huge gap between the first and second episodes because Nikhil had got a dislocated shoulder and I had also some back issues. So we were actually both down.
Yep.
And hopefully we will start getting out more content on a more regular basis. And we hope that you will continue to like and share and subscribe to our channel.
So till the next episode. See ya, guys. Adios.
See you guys. Thank you.